we will move on to this next topic, which, of course, we're talking about what I've heard it called as apostolic succession. This idea of, is there a handing down of the church? Is there a visible head of the church, right? Who is at the head? All right, Jay Dyer, I'm going to ask you this. Christ, did he or did he not establish a visible head of church representing the Orthodox position? You have an opening statement. I will give you 10 minutes on the clock. Let me reset it here for a moment. Your time will begin in just a second here. All right. For everybody that's here, it's Jay Dyer. You can find him here on YouTube and on Rumble and on X. Your time begins now. You may answer the question.
Right. Well, the real issue here is, of course, the Vatican I definition of the papacy, not just the question of did Jesus establish, quote, a visible head? Because for the Orthodox Church, we would say that all the bishops, as many of the church fathers argued apologetically in the first few centuries, all the bishops are actually Peter, something that St. Cyprian said. So there's no specifically unique special role that Peter gets amongst either the College of the Apostles nor amongst his successors, other than canonical privileges, which, for example, Canon 6 of Nicaea says is equivalent to other patriarchates. Not only that, at the Council of Ephesus, I don't know, I've never heard Tim talk about this, I don't know if he knows about it or not, but the church at Ephesus granted, through the Ecumenical Council, autocephaly to the Church of Cyprus. That means that it's autonomous and independent. This is usually unheard of in the world of Roman Catholic apologetics. They're not aware of the fact that there were autocephalous independent churches, and that's because the Roman Catholic Church developed eventually to have a monarchical autocratic position, which isn't just about indefectibility, infallibility in universal jurisdiction or a kind of papal autocracy. It actually went much further than that in the 11th century with the Gregorian reforms, to where the papacy became a de facto world emperor. Now, the canons of Chalcedon say that civil rulership and authority and power is forbidden for clerics to have. Not only did the Roman bishop go beyond this, the Roman bishop actually in Dictatus Papae in 1090 declared itself to be the only church founded by God, the only one that could be called universal, the only one that could reinstate and depose bishops, the only one that had the right of, quote, the imperial signia, the one in which all the princes in the world should kiss his feet, the one alone who may depose emperors, etc., etc. Really extreme, by the way, and can never err and will never err unto the end of the world. The problem is that Dictatus Papae and those claims in the next few centuries are actually based on known famous forgeries. Now, again, I want to promote my buddy George's book, Errors of the Latins. Volume 2 is 300 pages just on all of the infamous forgeries, whether the Sammachian forgeries, whether the Galatian decretals, or whether the donation of Constantine and many, many others. All of these really contributed, even according to Congar himself and other Roman Catholic scholars, to leading to this evolution of the papacy into a geopolitical world power. Now, you might say, well, that's not a big deal. I mean, come on, the Middle Ages, there was a power vacuum. But wait a minute. Did you know that a few centuries after Dictatus Papae, in Unum Sanctum, the last paragraph of this bull by Pope Boniface VIII in 1302 states that not only must you be in communion with the Roman See to be saved, you must also believe in the worldly temporal power of the Roman bishop to be saved. Now, nobody had ever heard of this doctrine before. And so how are we going to defend this? Oh, well, that's where the forgeries come in. You must also believe that the Pope is the quis aut haerat, the universe's super being to be saved, which nobody else believed or required for salvation prior to this. This is a new doctrine. Now, not only is this a new doctrine, I'm going to show definitively from the Roman Catholic teaching and from their own dogmas that this is actually now no longer held. But wait a minute, maybe this one didn't count. Maybe this is one of those things that I can throw in the not dogmatic bin, as you're going to see they arbitrarily do all the time. Well, actually, in the syllabus of errors, when I come all the way up about 900 years later, from the time of Dictatus Papae all the way up to Pius IX in the syllabus of errors, which is attached, by the way, to Vatican I, we read that in paragraph 76, the abolition of the temporal power of the Roman See is possessed, that it possesses, that it would be great for the church to get rid of this, condemned. So the proposition is condemned. And there's others that relate to this as well. Interesting, because John Paul I was the first pope to cease to use the papal tiara. That is the three-tiered tiara, which signified all levels of his power and authority, including temporal power and authority. But when we come to the documents of Vatican II, we find the exact opposite of this. Not only is the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop, which was for centuries necessary for salvation, discarded, we're actually told that, quote, in the Church and Modern World document, Jesus didn't actually come to bequeath any political mission to the church. It was only religious. That's paragraph 42. We read, for example, in the Church and the Modern World over in section 82, that the promotion of a world government is really the only solution in terms of internationalism, globalism, and entities, presumably like the UN. It doesn't say the UN, but it mentions surrendering power to international organizations. And then on paragraph 84, it actually says the exact same thing. So the papacy you see in the next page says that all Christians and non-religions can work together in human institutions for an end to war. So now we're going to have an end to war through entities like the United Nations. And if we flip over to the Religious Liberty document, chapter 2, it says, the Vatican declares that human persons have a right to religious freedom, that everyone should be immune from any coercion by any individual or social group or any human power at all in religious matters. Interesting, because that exact phraseology and terminology is actually condemned in the Syllabus of Errors numbers 55, 77, and 78. So in John the 23rd's Pacem in Terris, we're told that we can now begin to work towards a globalized government. This idea basically makes its way into the documents of Vatican II. And we're even told that the state should in no way at all coerce, and it should first and foremost respect people's liberty. Now, maybe you think that sounds good. Maybe you think, oh, that was a Cold War thing, and maybe they needed to promote religious liberty for the Cold War. But remember, for all of these centuries, all the way up until the Syllabus of Errors, you are required for your salvation, not just to believe in the Roman See in its spiritual supremacy and universality and infallibility, but also as a world emperor. And Pius IX condemns anyone that would dare go against that. Next, I would point out that in these same documents, we are told, for example, in Mortalium Animos of Pius XI, the Catholic Church, the Apostolic See, has never allowed its subjects to take part in any of the assemblies of non-Catholics. A few paragraphs earlier, before 14, it talks about how pan-Christians should be condemned. Ecumenist ceremonies and religious events are in no ways lawful for Catholics to be a part of. That is paragraph 9. So, 1928, it is always universally the Roman Catholic teaching that you cannot be involved in these ceremonies, rituals, and rites of, at that time, Protestant groups. But now in the post-Roman Catholic world, the Apostolic See supposedly has actually made itself part and party with other world religions, including Pachamama and other such bizarre ceremonies that took place at the Vatican. In fact, Tim, on his own website, on his own channel, has talked about how, in his view, he thinks it's heretical that the approval of communion for adulterers was given by Pope Francis. And we can, of course, list a long litany of problems with Francis. Now, I'm sure that we're going to hear tu quoque that you have corrupt bishops too. Orthodox have ecumenist bishops. But we don't have everything hinging on one dude, his infallibility, his indefectibility, and his universal jurisdiction. In fact, the Vatican itself, in the Chieti document, paragraph 19, admits in the very last section, appeals to the Bishop of Rome in the first 1,000 years, it's talking about, express the communion of the church. However, the Bishop of Rome did not exercise canonical authority over the churches of the East. Now, this is on the Vatican website. I'm not saying they're dogmatic statements. I don't need to say that they're dogmatic statements because essentially they're admitting the collegiality and the synodality that the Orthodox Church has been arguing for the last 1,000 years against the Roman Catholic Church. Now, that was Chieti in 2016. And then a couple of years ago, there was a part 2 to Chieti called the Alexandria document. In the Alexandria document, you have all of the things that I've been talking about admitted by the Vatican, including paragraph 1.3, the false decretals and the donation of Constantine contributing to this geopolitical world power of the papacy in the Middle Ages. Again, it has now been discarded. So I want to know, why is it that it was necessary for me to believe in the universal geopolitical Kwisatz Haderach doctrine of the papacy to be saved in the year 1400. It wasn't necessary in the year 500 because nobody taught that or believed that in the year 500. And then now, again, we're back to it doesn't count and you don't have to believe that anymore because the Vatican now says that religious liberty is the highest of all of the, religious liberty is the goal that all states should pursue when it comes to the role of church and state.
You have 45 seconds.
And lastly, I want to talk about, let's see. Yeah, I got through Chiedi. No, I'll go ahead and stop there. I think I've got to Papacy. Yeah, that's all my statements.
Okay, great. And obviously, there's a lot of questions here, and so the Catholic position I feel like is more well understood by people. But like I mentioned, it is very, very hard, especially just so you know, for myself, some of the nuances of how we know that the papacy is divine, or that we know that it's been passed down apostolically, and there hasn't been bribes and confusion. I think I'm not convinced, and I know not a lot of some people aren't. And just to clarify, this isn't siding with the Orthodox or anything, but sometimes I meet a lot of young Catholics, and they believe in this very strongly, but then don't know about some of the nuances. And so I hope you can answer some of our questions, during this time, or understand them. So you have an opening statement. I'm going to give you. I gave him 10 minutes and 30 seconds. So let me add an extra 30 seconds here to the clock. Give me a moment. I appreciate it. Arguing the Catholic position here on the is that correct to call it the apostolic succession here? Is that, or it was slightly different? The papacy a little bit different.
The papacy is a special instance. Yeah.
Okay, great. You have 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Timothy Gordon. You can find him on YouTube and all across the internet. Your time starts now.
Well, Jay's right. The church is synodal, and every synod requires a head. The prompt to this section that I didn't hear one word from Jay on is, did Jesus establish the Petrine office or the papacy or something, which is a chronology 2,000 years old. It's either a yes or a no. And if it's demonstrated that Jesus established a papacy, then it doesn't matter what might have happened 1,800 years, 1,900 years into the papacy, for better or for worse. What would matter, I guess at that point, Christianity would be destroyed. It wouldn't be Roman Catholicism that would be destroyed if, and only if, Jesus established a pontificate to head his one church. And that's the fact. When Christ built his church, he didn't leave us with a theory of unity, but with a living office. Because, again, synods require heads. The rock, the keys, the shepherd, all of these have meaning. From the first century to today, that office has always been recognized in the Bishop of Rome. The question tonight, and third prompt, is very simple. Did Christ intend a church with a center of unity, or did he intend a circularly premised epistemology, question-begging federation of 14 or more churches that fractures whenever disputes arise? And where you define the councils as being ecumenical when we accept them, but the accepted councils are how we know they're ecumenical. That's the Orthodox way. That's the way anytime you have a synod without a head. There has to be a visible sign of unity, or else it doesn't make any sense. Remember, throughout this debate, if Christ established the papacy, which was universal to all of Christianity for over 1,000 years, which is why Jay won't address the point in time that Christ established or didn't establish the papacy, and the papacy is later disproven, then it's Christianity that is false, not just Roman Catholicism. So that's really, really important. I hope that point resonates with people. Either Christ did or Christ didn't. We're going to assess that. I'm going to assess that tonight because that's the prompt. And by the way, yes, all bishops can be said to succeed Peter in a sense. Many of the patristics say this, but Rome succeeds him in a special way. The debate's not whether or not the church has visible unity, but where that unity is concretely safeguarded. The papacy, the good popes, the bad popes, the mediocre popes, it's concretely safeguarded there. Jesus want all to be one so that they could believe in John's Gospel, chapter 17. And Orthodoxy simply doesn't have it, which is why Jay won't address this. There is no oneness, no one Holy Catholic Apostolic. You can point out incoherencies that you believe and hear in the papacy, but if Christ established it, then that disproves all of Christianity. The Catholic position is that, I'll show it tonight, Christ established the papacy as a perpetual principle of unity. The Vatican II document restates this. Orthodox often will affirm papal primacy but deny universal jurisdiction, which is a nonsensical distinction. The question is, did Christ intend a merely honorific primacy or a juridical universal one? In other words, can the Pope actually make decisions for all of the churches around the world? There's 3 scriptural foundations for the papacy. It's Matthew chapter 16, verses 18 and 19. You are Peter, on this rock I will build my church. I will give you the keys. There's Luke chapter 22, verse 31, 32. Christ prays uniquely for Peter among all of the 12 that his faith may not fail, so that he alone may strengthen his brethren, confirm his brethren. John 21 is the 3rd papal scripture. Peter is entrusted with universal shepherding. He says 3 times, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, tend my lambs. This triad shows something jurisdictional. It's anagogical language, so let's go to the patristic testimony, because once again, we're trying to assess whether or not Jesus actually established the papacy, not whether or not Pope Francis signed the Chieti document or whatever 2,000 years later. We're trying to say, did Jesus establish this at the beginning? Well, most people don't know this. It's been either hidden from them or they've been brainwashed. Clement of Rome, before the year 100, direct successor of Peter, intervenes authoritatively in Corinth while the Apostle John is still alive in Ephesus. This is the earliest known exercise of Roman authority. He intervenes, Clement of Rome, this is the year 96 AD, and it's a well-established thing, though most Christians know nothing of it. Ignatius of Antioch, just 11 years later, one of the earliest patristics, calls the Roman Church the one presiding in love. The way this term president comes from this idea of presiding in love in his letter to the Romans. Irenaeus, less than a century later in 180 AD, insists that all churches must agree with the Roman Church because of its preeminent authority, direct quote, in Against Heresies. Preeminent authority. Have you ever heard Irenaeus cited this early on? Before even the year 2, almost halfway before the Nicene Council, the First Ecumenical Council, you have 3 of these guys saying preeminent, presiding. One of the earliest popes intervenes in Corinth. In 251 AD, Cyprian of Carthage, though he classes with Pope Stephen, he still calls Rome the chair of Peter in the principal church from which sacerdotal unity has arisen, principal PAL. This is all before Nicaea. People don't know it, and it's a shame that they don't know it. What they also don't know is that among the ecumenical, now there's this circularity operating within Orthodoxy because they don't have a principle of unity or oneness on earth. They'll say the councils are ecumenical when we accept them. When we don't like them, we won't accept them. And we know because they're not ecumenical. So it's a classic question begging or petitio principio. The first Ecumenical Council, Nicaea 325, has Canon 6, which Jay referenced. This actually, I'm glad he brought it up, it presupposes Roman primacy as a precedent for the Alexandria and Antioch patriarchies. It's a precedent for them. It's really important. It grounds Alexandria's authority by appealing to Rome's customs as the standard. So it's not saying that they're equal. It's saying that Rome has primacy. A complete misreading of this. Rome isn't local, so it would make no sense to compare one of the Eastern churches to Rome. Rome is the standard bearer. It is an established faraway authority, Rome. Primacy, not equality. That's right there, Canon 6, Council of Nicaea. Nicaea also establishes the 4 marks of the church, which the Catholic Church alone really claims, as far as I know. 1, Holy Catholic Apostolic. Orthodox can claim, because they have sacraments and real bishops, they can claim 2 of them, Holy and Apostolic, but they can't claim the other 2. 1, certainly. I've never heard of it. Maybe I'm wrong. But the Federation of Orthodox Churches can claim two. At the Council of Ephesus, which is the third ecumenical council, accepted by both Catholics and Orthodox, what happened is you had an appeal to Rome, to the Pope, to excommunicate the Patriarch of Constantinople by another Eastern Father, the head of the Holy and Blessed Peter, it's written, the Prince and Head of the Apostles, the column of the faith, the foundation of the Catholic Church, received the keys of the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ, and that to him was given the power of binding and loosing sins, who until this day and forever lives and judges in his successors. So it's not just Peter alone. In his successors he binds. The head of the whole faith, the head of the apostles, is Blessed Peter. This comes directly from that third council, Ephesus. The head of the whole faith, the head of the apostles, is Blessed Peter. This is not an honorific. This is direct. Cyril of Alexandria, who's the one writing the Pope, asking him to excommunicate what would become the number two in the church, says, "We rely on the authority of the blessed Apostle Peter, on whom the church was founded, and whose successor the blessed Pope Celestine is." He writes directly to Pope Celestine, and he says, "Your Holiness, who holds the place of Peter, the prince of the apostles," they're all princes in a sense, but Peter is prince of princes, "has rightly judged this matter and condemned Nestorius." In what honorary sense would you appeal to someone and say, fire this guy, excommunicate this guy, which is an extra important firing? You wouldn't. It's absurd. At the Council of Chalcedon, the very next council, after Pope Leo's tome is read, it says, "Peter has spoken through Leo," showing that there's a lineage, a very direct lineage, and it's Peter the prince, Leo's now the prince. Because, by the way, at this fourth ecumenical council, it shows the epistemic flaw in orthodoxy, that it's circular. The councilors are ecumenical when we accept them, but only the accepted councils are ecumenical. There is another group, the Oriental Orthodox, who broke away, and they never accepted the fourth ecumenical council. We Catholics have a way. We agree with the Eastern Orthodox. This is a valid council. We agree with each other about that. We have a way to show it. We have a visible sign of unity. We know that synods all have heads. The Orthodox can't. The Eastern Orthodox and the Oriental Orthodox are still at odds over the fourth ecumenical council. Constantinople III, Peter is Prince of the Apostles, who continues the promise undefiled to the end. Nicaea II, primatial authority. Jay agrees with this council. Primatial authority everywhere on earth was given by the Redeemer of the world himself to the Apostle Peter. Constantinople IV, it's their council. It reads the letter of Pope John VIII. The chief of the apostles, Peter, has the authority of universal binding and loosing. This is indisputable that at the time of the founding of the church and the immediate chain of evidence thereafter, for the next 7 councils, you have a universal appellate jurisdiction of the Pope, which is why he could excommunicate, and he was being sought for excommunication.
All right, you're going to complete your thoughts there? Because I think we probably should end on the time right there.
What's that?
We should probably end on the time. You're already in the bleed. You're hitting towards a minute.
All right.
If you want another minute, you're going to have to concede a minute on the next round.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll end there.
All right. So the opening statements, I want to one in the chat if you think that, we're getting to a point to where you think that Timothy had a better opening statement right there, or 2 in the chat if you think that Jay had a better statement. Let's go right into the rebuttal. We'll read some super chats after the rebuttal. I think we'll just go to Jay. Jay, from that opening statement, you're writing down some questions. Give me your best rebuttal. I'm going to reset the clock to put it down to 5 minutes. Let's try to keep it tight at 5 and not go over in any bleed. You can have a 30-second bleed if you need. I'm resetting it to a standard time. You can begin now.
Yeah, well, the reason that I didn't go into the question about Matthew and the passages in the book of John or Luke or whatever is that we don't disagree that there's apostolic succession from Peter, but I don't know if he's aware of it. Peter is actually called the father of 3 C's. In fact, you can read Pope St. Gregory the Great in his letter number 40, where he talks about the apostolic see being 3 chairs. So as late as Gregory the Great in his day, he's still calling Rome, Antioch, and Alexandria the Petrine See. So nobody disagrees that Rome is first, and he cited Saint Irenaeus and against heresies, but he didn't tell you why Irenaeus says that it is given this honor and authority. He says it is doubly apostolic, Peter and Paul. Maybe he's not aware of the fact that by the time of Vatican I, they actually reject the position of the argumentation of St. Irenaeus that you cannot say that Rome has its supremacy because of Paul in any sense. So even though Paul is honored still in Rome because he was martyred there, the only reason that Rome has this supposed indefectibility, its universal jurisdiction and so forth, is supposedly because of a Petrine tradition and charism. However, Pope St. Gregory the Great, who himself was a pope, doesn't have a problem still talking about there being 3 Petrine sees, but of course Roman Catholics never talk about that because they don't give you the context behind these comments and these statements. Let me read what the Canon 6 of Nicaea actually says. It says, "Let the ancient customs in Egypt, Libya, and Pentapolis prevail." Now, note the references to customs. There's no reference to a divine charism, to divine law. It's only to ancient customs. That in all of these, the Bishop of Alexandria has jurisdiction, since the like is customary for the Bishop of Rome. Likewise in Antioch and other provinces. He just assumed that Rome was a universal, and so it just doesn't really count. But the jurisdictions are being likened to Rome. And his argument is just that, well, but of course everybody knows that Rome was universal in its jurisdictions. Really? Because he's not aware of the fact that appellate structure and the Synod and Canons of Sardica actually prove our position. Because what Sardica says is not that the Roman bishop has the final say. Rather, they actually say that the Roman bishop could be appealed to, as well as other patriarchs and bishops can be appealed to and were appealed to, and he can order a retrial in that jurisdiction. It is the opposite of the Vatican I papal autocracy position. Allow me to read his own Vatican statement from the Chieti document, which he should have read. Over the centuries, many appeals were made to the Bishop of Rome from the East in disciplinary matters such as the deposition of a bishop. An attempt was made at Sardica in 343 to establish the rules for this procedure. Sardica was received at the Council of Trullo in 692, which his church rejects. The canons of Sardica determined that a bishop who has been condemned could appeal to the Bishop of Rome, and that in the latter, if he deemed appropriate, might order a retrial. Oh, that's not the autocratic Vatican I view that he was arguing for, that he hoped would be the kill shot. Rather, this could be conducted by the bishops in the province neighboring that person's bishop. Appeals regarding these matters disciplinary matters were also made to Constantinople and to other sees. Oh, dang, that's synodal, that's collegial. By the way, Athanasius and people who are in these situations, if you read the letters of St. Basil, as I mentioned earlier, he wasn't aware of the Meletian Schism. And as Denny notes in the chapter in Papalism, Constantinople I was called and closed outside of communion with Rome. And in fact, centuries later, Rome accepts Constantinople I retroactively. That's a problem for his position. But out of all this, I would remind him that he seems to not be aware of Pope Vigilius and the really strong case that we have there, as Ubi brought up to Ibarra. If you remember Ibarra saying, "I haven't found actually a good answer to that question yet, but I will come up with it eventually, maybe." Why is this? Why is Vigilius such a key point? Vigilius submitted to the Ecumenical Council after reversing his position 4 different times. So wait a minute, let me get this right. Vatican I, which says that the Roman bishop is the head of all the churches, has universal jurisdiction, even though his own Vatican documents, like the Chieti document, admit that the Roman bishop didn't have universal jurisdiction the first 1,000 years. Now Vigilius has to submit to, and does submit to, the Ecumenical Council's judgment and being removed from the diptychs. That's a problem position for him and for Eric Ibarra. I don't have to prove every single specific to disprove Roman Catholicism. All I need is one dogmatic contradiction or one papal failure, such as Vigilius submitting to a council, which shows that Vatican I is false, that ecumenical councils are inferior to and always subordinate to the Pope, to prove his position is false. Just like when he tried to cite other examples like, Orthodox don't have any position that's really consistent. Wait a minute, Lateran 649 condemned monothelitism and was intended by Pope Martin to be an ecumenical council, and yet it was not accepted as an ecumenical council. And there was another council that happened called Constantinople III, where they themselves decided to condemn the positions based on investigating the theology of St. Maximus. It's not Pope St. Martin that is the key deciding figure of Constantinople III, which, if the Vatican I papacy position were true, he would have already solved the issue. Rome is spoken, cases closed, supposedly, we're told, right? But he also doesn't seem to be aware that if he'd read on the history of Chalcedon, Rome is spoken, cases closed isn't actually because Leo is the standard and test of orthodoxy at Chalcedon. If he'd read any of the academic literature on it, he would know that even his Roman Catholic scholars admit that Cyril is the standard of orthodoxy at Chalcedon, and Leo is checked against Cyril by Chalcedon for many weeks, or excuse me, many days, investigating to see if the tome matches up to Leo. Now, I disproved his position by pointing out one dogmatic contradiction amongst many, which was that for centuries you had to believe in the temporal supremacy of the Roman bishop. You didn't have to believe it for centuries before that. And now we don't have to believe it anymore past Vatican II and the religious liberty and ecumenist pronouncements. That's a contradiction.
All right, I'm going to give you an extra minute because he took an extra minute. Go ahead, Timothy. I'm going to reset the clock. Give me one moment to add an extra minute and reset. Okay, you have 6 minutes on the clock for your rebuttal. Go ahead.
There's absolutely no dogmatic contradiction. So Vatican II, we have an ecumenical council that happens after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, after the fall of all of the confessional states on earth. So only the confessional states are bound because, of course, secular states can't be bound by the Pope. The Pope can tell them what to do, but they're not going to do it. This was always the context of this discipline. It's a discipline anyway. By the way, the Pope has only in the last 1,000 years identifiably spoken ex cathedra, meaning making doctrine twice, count them twice. One in around 1850, one around 1950. And in both of those cases, the Pope polled all of the bishops first, because this is what's consistent with the papal power going all the way back to Peter. He polled to make sure that he did not make an ex cathedra statement in 1854 and then in 1951. The only two ex cathedra statements that would disprove the papacy by being wrong. He polled all of the bishops because there's collegial brethren, and then he named the third and the fourth Marian dogma ex cathedra. So Jay's always just skipping over the fact that the Pope is only infallible when he speaks ex cathedra. This is a most fundamental claim. And by the way, popes can be heretics, whether you're talking about Honorius or other problematic popes that were borderline heretics throughout the way. Most of the majority of Catholic scholars think that popes can actually be heretics. They just can't contradict themselves when they're speaking ex cathedra. And this would be really clear if Jay had read the Relatio of Bishop Gasser at Vatican I. It's very, very, very consistent with the collegial papacy of the previous 1800 years. Now, there are, I would say, in exegeting Matthew chapter 16, Luke 22, John 21, there are Eastern scholars, Theodore Studite, Abu Qurra, who exegete it exactly the way that we do. Antioch and Alexandria also succeed Peter because Mark went on to Alexandria. Peter used to be at Antioch. It's very, very, very clear that we're not reading into the text. Now, the question at hand is, did Christ establish a binding, unifying papacy? I've shown through the scripture, through patristic scholars in the first 2 centuries that he did. One of the very first popes after Peter literally was exercising a jurisdiction. At several of the ecumenical councils, you had an appeal to the appellate jurisdiction of Rome. I'm not just going to sit here and repeat the quotations from the Octa of those councils where they're saying Rome alone. Knowing that doctrinal unity requires a visible sign. So, like I said, the original argument is if Christ established a papacy, then if that papacy should fail, all of Christianity fails. That's just a fact. Now, if he didn't establish the papacy, then that wouldn't be the case. But pointing out historical difficulties, even if I granted them, which I don't, later in the timeline doesn't accomplish what Jay claims it does. So if Christ established the papacy, then prevailing would require not that Catholicism is false, but Christianity is. Remember, like Back to the Future 2, when Doc explains to Marty by use of a chalkboard why they wound up in an altered 1985, because the source of the problematic timeline lay at the very beginning of the story in 1955. If you want to disprove the papacy, you have to go to the beginning of the story and show that Christ didn't establish a papacy. You can't just sit and, if you're a Christian anyway, you can't sit around and point out what you don't like about Pope Francis' Chieti document, not a magisterial document, by the way, definitely not infallible. You can't point at any of the documents that Jay is going to tonight to get to the beginning of the timeline. In the case of Christianity, the papacy was from the very beginning universally accepted, occasionally grudgingly by the East, but they accepted it for 1,000 years. I mean, this should be more compelling to people that are passive standers by. Why was it accepted for 1,000 years, over 1,000 years, and then it was just okay not to? They just hope you don't see that fact. This is a brute fact established beyond any doubt. Not even Jay's going to disagree with me. It was accepted for over half of the timeline of Christianity, and now they just whistle past the fact that it's no longer accepted. Instead, Eastern Orthodoxy, you'll never hear a defense of this because it's a coherentist rather than a foundationalist position. Jay's not trying to build anything. He's just trying to poke holes in the papacy. They insist on a popeless ecclesiology, one with willful blindness about its own 1,000-year acceptance of the pontificate until they didn't want to anymore, whose epistemology, which is really just conciliarism, a valid council is ecumenical. We know that it's ecumenical because we deem it's valid, destroys itself for all to see, like at Chalcedon, when you had the Oriental Orthodox break away from the Eastern Orthodox. They still don't agree about much. It's a circular rule of faith, and you're never going to hear them build this up, this circular rule of faith, because it's indefensible. Their hierarchy can and does fall into heresy. This is not just tu quoque. They're not bound to accept ecumenical councils. The councils are ecumenical when we accept them, and the accepted councils are ecumenical. This is the rule of faith if you really press on orthodoxy at all. There is no epistemological framework for determining which councils are ecumenical and why. That's not true in Roman Catholicism. In Roman Catholicism, we have this visible sign of unity. 3 scriptural passages, several of the early fathers interpreting them exactly the way we do. And with no living, visible authority or sign of unity, how is the Eastern Orthodox believer to know which councils to accept? They simply won't tell you this. Well, because it's just true. You just have to accept it as true. It's a question begging. Roman Catholics have the papacy to tell us, and no, we don't just accept the papacy blindly. We accept it because Christ established it. So circularity ends up being embraced as a kind of theological mystery, because this is the last resort. For example, the rejection of Florence. Florence was the reunion council in 1439. 31 out of 33 of their delegates at Florence signed it and said, we were wrong about the filioque, we were wrong about the papacy. And then they went home and 10, 12, 14 years later had a revolt, and under duress were forced to undo it. And you ask them, how do you know that council wasn't ecumenical? Because we didn't like the outcome. It's that simple.
All right. I want to hear us. One's in the chat, by the way, if you think that Timothy Gordon had the better rebuttal, and I'd like to see 2s in the chats. If you think Jay Dyer had the better rebuttal, we'll be giving them a second to get ready for their cross-examination. Just to read a couple of the super chats here. Tia Gwinowski said, Orthodox were actually the first Protestants. Lonian just said they want to tell you, Gordon, that the Orientals and Assyrians don't have autocratic popes. Their head bishops are first among equals. Just like the EO position in the 4th century, they didn't have RC papism in mind either. Orthodoxy, Phronosis said, Roman Catholicism has the papacy, Orthodoxy has the church, only one heals. Tain't Nothing said, Tim, that's just a fact, Gordon. We have Lauren First said popes can be material heretics, but not formal. And we've certainly had our share of material heresies in the last 6 decades from popes. Blaze on the Right Thing, also the Pope is a local, metropolitan, and universal bishop. The Canon 6 of Nicaea is simply referring to the Pope's metropolitan duties. No contradiction. We also have Orthodoxy. Chloroquine said Orthodox and Muslim countries have 0 World Cups. End of debate. God doesn't like schismatics, or heretics. Hades Undead 2366 said, Jay, despite being the oldest, is still the best E-Diva Masterclass rapper on this show. Appreciate all the work, Jay. You're killing it as always. Jamie owes you an octuple espresso shot. I can witness that. I did. I remember he was here and he asked for coffee. And like most people, he put a little milk in your coffee. Some people say it's gay. If it is gay, it's very popular to be gay today, but milk is good in coffee. And then he said he just wanted coffee and proceeded to just shoot like double espressos into a cup over ice. And he just ate like bitter, dark espresso that burns his throat. It's the kind of man that he is. It's good stuff. You should have seen the way his wife was looking at him. He was just down in that coffee. What a Chad. Clovetto Antiquity said, as prot with the following, J1. You're not even done. SCAF777 sent $50. Thank you so much for that. I said, why does the Pope wear a little hat and kiss the silly wall? That's more of a rhetorical question for sure. Mike Hansen, 2393 said, Win Jay. Tim, the greatest moment of 2025 would be to see you and your wife come home to the Orthodox Church. May God guide your journey, bro. We also have a couple here. Another Australian said, can confirm Life Essence from Mr. Fista is still spy rating from Joe Rogan. He has not passed away yet. Jesus will not take him until he has fought Liver King. We also have Edgy EB1610 said, rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. It's all so clear now. And then we have Nathan Slippery said, if a woman is raped, she is passively raping the man. Tim's theology. All right. We will, okay, I'll just read one more. SCAF777 also sent $20 and said, why does the Pope pray in synagogues and mosques? There's a lot of questions about that. All right. We are going to go to the cross-examination. We will start with Mr. J. Dyer. You will have 5 minutes on the clock. Give me a moment here. Let me reset the clock. You may begin.
Yeah. First, I want to note that he seemed to be saying that there's only guidance and infallibility when it comes to ex cathedra statements. He must not be aware of the fact that Vatican I says that all things are divinely revealed and to be believed, whether in the word of God handed down by the church in solemn judgments, which would be ex cathedra, by her ordinary and universal teaching, which is proposed for belief as having been divinely revealed. So do you agree that you also have to believe the universal ordinary teaching and the ex cathedra? They're both under the charism?
You have a submission in mind and will that's religious, but it's not protected by the charism of infallibility.
Universal ordinary isn't.
Universal ordinary, are you talking about councils or popes? Universal ordinary teaching of popes is not infallible.
That's what Vatican I says.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Do you want me to read it again?
No. Vatican I does not
read it again. I'm going to read Vatican I to
ordinary councils.
Universal ordinary teaching. There's three structures. Do you disagree with your own theological manuals that talk about the three tiers?
No, that's
oh, really?
Fine.
Okay, so there's ordinary magisterium, there's extraordinary magisterium, and there's universal ordinary magisterium. So I think you're confusing the ordinary and the universal ordinary.
Papal.
Because
we're talking papal magisterium.
That's the only magisterium.
No. Papal magisterium.
Only the papacy is magisterium.
No. So you think that ex cathedra, he thinks ex cathedra means, which guarantees infallibility.
No, I'm not asking about that. That's extraordinary.
Only to...
No, I'm asking you about Vatican I saying that universal ordinary teaching is also part of the charism.
It's part of the charism.
So it's protected.
It's not protected under infallible.
Oh, so the charism isn't infallible?
No.
So so you just refuted
You're doing
yourself.
it again, man. You're doing it again.
When you slip up, it's my fault.
No, you think that ex cathedra teachings by the Pope, the sole papal teachings that enjoy the charism of infallibility.
Vatican I says that
Vatican I does not say that.
I'm reading it to you right now.
You have to read the whole page. We did this on 10.
All right. If he thinks you're interrupting, then we'll stop for a second. Well,
furthermore, all things are to be believed with divine Catholic faith contained in the Word of God.
Yes.
Written or handed down.
Yes.
Which the church, either by solemn judgment, that's ex cathedra?
That's not ex cathedra.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
A solemn judgment by the church?
A solemn judgment. It's religious submission in mind and will.
No. Yes. You're misunderstanding. This is talking about ex cathedra or the universal ordinary magisterium as divinely revealed.
That both applies of them to bishops.
Both of them.
That applies
why
to
are you talking about
only.
Bishops? This is talking about the Roman sees two things that are protected by the charism: extraordinary and ex cathedra.
You're wrong on this. Ordinary, you're just flat wrong. Ordinary and universal is all bishops, not just pope. You're wrong.
Do you understand?
You're straight up wrong.
Your own manuals teach that there's three.
It applies to the bishops at councils.
There's three.
I know that.
What are the three?
What are the three? Read them to me.
Well, I thought you knew.
No, I do know.
What are they?
But you're trying to say
Name
that
the
ex
three.
cathedra that ex cathedra is not the only way that a pope can speak from the chair with the charism of universal protection.
It's called universal ordinary magisterium, and it's not the ordinary magisterium.
No.
Yes.
You're just
Your
wrong.
own manual
You're
say it
just
right
wrong.
here.
Show
You're
it to me.
lying.
Show it to me.
Ordinary magisterium is the regular teaching of the bishops.
I'm not lying. Can I see it?
I'm going to read it to you. The ordinary teaching of the
dead
bishops.
wrong.
Tell me what ordinary magisterium is.
You don't want to let him see it? Who wants to see it?
I want
Can
it. Yeah,
Can
this
you give
is
it to me?
Tim Pool's situation. Yeah. So I can explain to you what these are. Ordinary magisterium, individual bishop, groupings of bishop, bishop of Rome. This is ordinary. This is not protected by
I didn't say
ex
it
cathedra.
was.
Okay. Extraordinary
There's
magisterium.
no ex cathedra protection. It's
The
called
College
the
of Bishops
Petrine
issuing a solemn definition while
Is
gathered
that
in an
protected?
ecumenical council.
Is it protected?
Yes.
That's what I'm arguing.
That's the College of... No, you're talking about the Pope. I said that's not the Pope, that's the,
Pope
bishops.
has to- he's
you said
deflecting. Give me that
it's
back,
not the
'cause he's-
bishops. Wait,
he's
hold
not
on.
even-
The
It's
Bishop
his
of
time.
Rome
It's his time.
issuing
Okay.
a solemn
You're not-
definition ex
You know
cathedra.
that two of
He
the
wants it
three.
back. He wants it back for his
Two
Okay,
of
can
the
I read
three-
this one?
Well,
Two
during
of the
your
three.
time.
You're
There
deflecting.
you go.
Two of the three are protected by the charism.
No.
Yes, they are. One of them
Councils
One of them can
and the
err.
Pope speaking. Councils are protected. The Pope speaking, but there's only one
Universal-
way to speak
All right.
ex cathedra. Read the bottom one, Jay. Read the bottom one.
The universal ordinary magisterium, according to Vatican I, is said to be.
Ordinary's Pope.
Stop interrupting me. There's two things that are protected by the charism of Peter, according to Vatican I: solemn judgments or her ordinary universal teaching. Both of these.
Solemn judgments by
Stop
bishop.
interrupting me.
Yeah,
Stop
let's be quiet for a
interrupting
second.
me.
correction.
It
You're
doesn't
just
say
saying
that.
It's
Let him finish
clear.
the statement. Let him finish the statement. He's trying to make a statement, and then we'll end. You have.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt.
Yes,
Listen,
you are.
We're giving you.
Yes,
We're giving
you
you
are.
30
Because
seconds.
you can't handle this business.
Tim,
You know what?
stop for a second. Go ahead and finish the last statement. You have 30 extra seconds.
These
for the
two
interruption.
things, solemn judgments and the ordinary universal teaching, are divinely revealed and protected according to this.
Oh, can I see it now? Oh, can I rebut?
No,
the
you don't
rebuttal
have.
now?
He's
Well,
burning
listen,
out the
listen.
time.
All right.
So
All right.
now
Keep going. Just be quiet for a
he
second.
doesn't want.
I can
yeah.
explain it to you
Hold on,
after.
hold on,
I don't
hold on,
need you
hold
to
on, hold
explain
on.
it because I'm.
Well,
explaining-
cross-examine me on it.
Hey,
The only statements by
Tim.
Pope. He's supposed to be asking me a question.
I know. Well, he hasn't gotten a
He's
question.
made a
He's trying to make
mistake and he's
statement.
trying to run
denying
from
the
it.
universal magisterial teaching.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Ex
It
cathedra
says-
statements are the only statements by popes in under Vatican I in Pastor Aeternus. The only single one-off
You didn't
statements
read
by
the
popes.
You didn't read the whole
that
document.
have the
You
charism.
didn't read
You
the-
said otherwise.
Universal
You screwed up,
ordinary,
man.
universal ordinary magisterium, according to Vatican I, is also protected under the charism.
I
and
told you.
cannot err.
Popes ordinarily.
Can it err?
Popes in their ordinary magisterium have to be followed
I'm
with
asking you a
religious
question.
submission and
All right,
mind.
he doesn't
answer the
answer
question.
questions.
Okay, wait.
He doesn't
you
wanna
have to end on
cross
time
X?
here. So ask the one question.
Why
and
are
then
you
a
not
simple
answering
answer.
questions?
What's the question?
Answer the
You know what the
question.
question was?
Ask.
You
Give
dishonest.
him extra
man. You
time.
Yeah, thank you.
Give him extra
Ask the
time.
question. Yeah, ask the question.
You screwed up.
I
There's-
didn't, how did I screw up?
Because there's only one infallible way a pope can speak
No, there's
something
not.
into dogma.
That's
Yes,
not what.
there is.
That's not what the question was.
What was
I
the
didn't
question?
say
Ask,
the only.
ask the question simply right now, and then he can't say that he didn't hear it, or he can't dodge it, and he'll answer it, and then we'll be fine. There you go.
Vatican
Go ahead.
I teaches that there are two, which is two of this three, that are protected by the Petrine charism and by infallibility and by the Holy Spirit. One of them is ex cathedra.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is ordinary universal teaching. The thing,
No,
yes,
councils. Councils.
stop interrupting.
let him
I'm
ask
citing
the
your
question.
freaking counsel, dude.
You're reading it
All
wrong.
right.
I'm
Guys.
reading it wrong when I read it literally.
Okay.
You're not understanding. it.
right.
No, you don't know your own documents because this isn't part of Pastor Eternity.
ridiculous.
This is a different. You don't know it.
I do know it.
Okay, let's switch this up because you don't want to do this. Tell me in the first.
Is there an infallible
Stop interrupting
teaching?
me. Stop. Why can you not answer the questions? You are literally the worst at this.
Jay, this is really bad, man.
Really
You got
bad.
yourself
Tell
into
me-
a hole,
stop
and
it.
now you're trying to
What
dig
you
out.
want- it's
All right.
not a hole. You won't.
Well,
you
none of
literally
you guys
won't
will
listen.
listen.
I cite it to you.
Not your father, but just ask the question. Don't interrupt him, and then answer simply. Here we go. Go ahead. Finish your statement, question, whatever you want to call it. Get it out. Don't say anything till he's done. When he says, you say I'm done when you're done, and then he'll come in and he'll respond. And don't interrupt him either. He'll say he's done when he's done.
There's 3 levels. Okay. The level first that is and can err is ordinary teaching. That's individual bishops, groups of bishops, and even the Bishop of Rome. The next level is the universal ordinary magisterial teaching, defined as whenever the College of Bishops throughout the world issues a united judgment with the Roman pontiff to be held in faith and morals. Okay? This one is protected by the charism of Peter, according to Vatican I.
Which one?
The one I just read. Oh my gosh.
Do you want me to explain it?
No, because you don't know what you're talking about.
Of course I know what I'm talking about.
No, you don't.
So are you done then? Were you
No,
done there?
I'm not.
Okay, so let's
He
not.
interrupted
What's
me.
the question?
Then let's not.
I'd like to hear
interject.
the
I'm
question.
listing the 3.
Wait till he says he's
of
done.
your stupid
Wait till he
position.
says he's done.
I promise you're reading it wrong.
Just wait till he says
I'm
he's
reading it
done.
wrong.
Okay.
I'm literally reading the text, his own text, and I'm reading it wrong.
Requires interpretation.
Okay, hey, can you mute his mic for a second? What do you mean his mic too? Mute his mic, and then I'm gonna mute his mic when you answer. All right, mute his mic, and then we'll talk. We'll go here. Here we go. Go ahead. The mic's muted. You can say whatever
He's
you want.
just deflecting because he doesn't want to go into this because he
No,
he
I'd
knows
love
it.
to.
Stop interrupting. Good God, man.
Just go. All right, it's muted. Go ahead. I guess it took a second there.
The first was the ordinary magisterium that can err, the ordinary teaching. Individual bishops, groups of bishops, Bishop of Rome. The next level is the universal ordinary teaching. Whenever the College of Bishops teaches anything in union with the Bishop of Rome, that, according to Vatican I, is literally said right here to be believed by divine revelation and magisterium. Ordinary universal teaching has to be believed, and thus it cannot err. So the only one that could err was the first one, ordinary teaching. Universal ordinary teaching, according to Vatican I, cannot err because just like the extraordinary or the ex cathedra stuff, it is also protected. 2 of these are protected. The one is not. What I want to know from you is, can you give me an example in the first 1,000 years of the church where there's anything like what's in Unum Sanctum or what is in Dictatus Papae or all the way up into the Syllabus of Errors, showing that the Bishop of Rome is a geopolitical world power and that you must believe that to be saved?
All right, are you done?
Yes, because I'm pointing out a contradiction in their teaching.
Okay, so now mute Jay's mic for a second, if you can, just because we're going to be fair here. We're going to do up both sides here, just to get through this question, the rebuttal.
Is it going to be the same when he asks me?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
be like,
yeah. It'll be
Are we
fine.
going to do this muting thing again?
No, I mean, no. I mean, if he doesn't want you to, if he wants to, then yes. But you don't want him to interrupt you. So but I'm going to try to be fair too. So it's just with no interrupting here. We're going to end it here because we're over on the time on this. Go ahead, mute Jay, and then just go to him, and then we're just going to get a clear answer. Go ahead.
Answer the question clearly. Unum Sanctum is a papal bull, which is a lower level of magisterium than you're thinking it is, and according to it. No, there's not something in the first millennium that's quite like it. It's not saying everyone must personally recognize the Pope or they're damned, the way you're thinking it is. Instead, it's asserting that salvation comes from Christ's church. And since the church is visible and hierarchical, submission to the Pope is the ordinary means of union with Christ's body. Now, ordinary
Why
and
am I muted in the interruption?
here.
Because you
This is
want him
literally-
muted,
you asked me a
so
question. This is the
This
answer.
is not his full time. He's just answering you. He's a part of your time. He's just answering you real fast. He's just
It's
answering
not
you.
real fast.
For,
and it's not,
for clarity's
it's not the
sake.
question I asked.
Oh, you got
All right.
to you got to let me answer this.
All right, we're on- this is
ordinary
over time. This is
ordinary
nobody's time.
magisterium
This is
is the
nobody's
Pope.
time.
This is no one's time. Ordinary
Just-
is the Pope. Okay, ordinary is the Pope. Ordinary and universal is all bishops, and
not.
ordinary universal is protected, but for bishops. It's that
He doesn't even know his own teaching.
Well, but
right.
it's just that clear.
right.
What Jay
It literally doesn't say
all
that.
I'm not. I mean, it's a complex looking chart.
All right. Well,
I'm
here's
sorry
the deal.
that it's complex.
just-
It's difficult for you.
All right.
No,
all right, we're gonna move on to your.
There's
we're gonna move on
only
to your
one
thing.
type of
We're gonna move
infallible
on.
papal teaching.
I'm glad that you keep
we're gonna move on.
reasserting your
All right.
position.
People can
Anyway,
go check.
all right. Moving
Check me.
along here to your ability to go ahead and ask him questions and go ahead and go there. He obviously don't feel like he answered the question. You feel like he's obfuscating, right? Sorry, unmute his mic. Sorry, the board's shorted. That's why it just messes up right now.
The last question was about the geopolitical power of the papacy, which is not just in unum sanctum as necessary for salvation. It's stated all the way up until the syllabus of errors. You tried to castigate that, to cast that as a discipline, but you're saying that it's not there in the first 1,000 years, but it was required for salvation. The temporal power.
No, I answered your question. I said no. There's nothing. I said no. It was a
Okay.
yes/no question.
So
I said
it
no.
didn't
There's
exist.
nothing
Thank
quite
you.
like it.
Thank you.
But what I
Thank
followed
you.
up with is Boniface VIII's language was sharpened by a political fight, and it's sharpened by a political situation. You guys in the East should understand this very well because the emperors made your decisions for most of even the latter.
You mean like the
first
Germanic
millennium.
popes that were
It was a
installed by
political
kings for
fight
100 years?
with
100
Philip
years of Germanic
IV.
kings.
Catholic theology recognizes this principle. It recognizes the principle apart from polemical expression. And
Of
the
what?
principle that it stands for, the proposition it stands for, is the unity of the church under the successor of Peter. So yes, that's defensible.
So there was no geopolitical
But
power
it
that
removes
was
it-
necessary for salvation
No.
belief in the first 1,000 years. Thank
no,
you.
not
There
as a
wasn't.
dogma. No, this is disciplinary. It's stripped from its
disciplinary?
facts.
Is it faith and morals?
No, it's rhetorical. There's a lot of rhetoric
So it's
there.
disciplinary to get around
Unum
the fact
sanctum is a
that it
papal bull,
contradicts.
a
It's not
lowish
just unum
level
sanctum.
magisterium.
It's all the way up in the
What is
syllabus
it?
of errors.
What's
it's
all the way
900
up in the
years.
syllabus of errors?
The Romans seized
Well, I mean,
geopolitical
you brought up
power
unum
beliefs. So he
sanctum.
did- so-
I'm just explaining I'm
You didn't
answering your
explain
question
any-
about
no, you
unum
didn't
sanctum.
answer.
I'm saying it's a papal bull.
You said
you thought
that
it was
it
more
doesn't-
important than that.
It's
and that's
necessary for
absurd.
salvation for 900 years, and now it's not, and it wasn't
It's
the first
not
1,000
necessary
years.
for salvation.
The
Unum sanctum.
doctum says it's necessary for salvation.
Read that. I'm
It
All
is
right,
necessary
all
for
right, read
salvation
it.
to be subject to the Roman pontiff, not just in spiritual matters. The last paragraph of Unum Sanctum is about the temporal supremacy also being necessary to be saved.
okay.
It is absolutely necessary for salvation for every human being to be subject to the Roman pontiff in both the temporal
And
and the spiritual sense.
runs. That refers to confessional states. The context is confessional states. Did the Holy Roman Empire still exist then?
It says every human being must
Yes,
believe
within
in
the context
the
of
temporal
confessional states.
Okay, where was the temporal supremacy in the first 1,000 years? It didn't exist.
No, it did exist.
Where was this doctrine in the first 1,000 years?
Well, I mean,
can you
I'm
name a
not
church
saying-
father that teaches it?
Can you name
Tu quoque? Can you
No,
name a
that's
church
not
father that teaches this?
I mean,
No, because it doesn't exist.
well, so this is a development of the power.
Oh, exactly.
So it's
yeah.
a development
And now
of
it's
the power.
developed away because do we have to believe it
But-
now?
No,
do we
no,
have
no.
to believe it now?
No. It's
Do we have to believe it
disciplinary.
now?
The way it developed was disciplinary.
So anything that is
Yes.
a dogmatic contradiction is suddenly now disciplinary.
Yes. So that's disciplinary.
Exactly. Thank you.
Precisely. Well, did you
Anything
did you
that's a
did you do
contradiction, you explain it away.
anything to show, Jay,
Where
that
was-
Christ didn't establish a pontificate?
Yeah, so run off to something else.
No, run off to the prompt of the debate, which you haven't addressed
All
once.
I had to show was that there's
No, you
one
didn't.
contradiction.
No, you don't. Because Christ
I don't. You
established
can't even
a
say your
Petrine
words.
ministry. Christ established a Petrine ministry. I've shown it.
How does that
I
prove Vatican
exegeted
I?
it. I showed it. There are developments in the pontificate over the years.
The Petrine ministry was supposed to
In
be
the first seven
a
councils.
geopolitical world
In the
power.
first seven councils.
A geopolitical world power.
There are
Where's that?
good popes, bad popes. There are mediocre
Where
popes.
in the first 1,000 years is a geopolitical world power?
That is what we call
emperor?
a disciplinary distinction. And the church
How
has
is
said it multiple
How
times.
is it disciplinary if it's necessary for salvation for 900 years?
It's disciplinary insofar as the modern church, as you said yourself, doesn't even hold that this doctrine is true.
So
it's not a doctrine.
when there's a contradiction, it's suddenly disciplinary and it can go away. Thank you.
No.
All right. We're gonna move on from there. I'm gonna give you your time. Theoretically, you would have unlimited time after the length of that
All night?
situation. But also, to be fair, I'm gonna give you the 5 minutes. But if you guys want to go, you guys want to still hammer out the point. If you don't think it is, I'll give you the ability to hammer it out as well. Since Jay got that from the chat, I'd have no idea who won that because the chat's it's like. We were someone was saying Tucker won, like you know what I mean, like just throwing in chat, just throwing in ideas in there. But you guys seem to be very, very dogmatic on who you support. I'd like to know once and for all before we go on to this rebuttal. That rebuttal, do you believe one's in the chats that Jay won, two's in the chats that Timothy won? Let's go. One's for Jay, two's for Timothy. I just want to see a little bit what's going on there and what's happening. Sometimes I can tell by your names as well what's going on. All right. As we go into there, I'm going to give you your time on the clock. Theoretically, you have 5 minutes. Again, if for some reason there's a contention and a challenge, I'll give you.
Wasn't that way more than 5 minutes?
Well, I said the middle ground was nobody's. I was like, because it was just a separate issue. You guys were. If we weren't going to mute, if we were going to mute, then it would have been his minutes. But since we unmuted both, it's like, okay, then we'll just go at it. And you guys.
This is cross X, right?
Yeah, go ahead. As I said, theoretically 5 minutes, but if for some reason you can't get done the time, then we'll get it done. Here we go. Go ahead and begin. You can start your questioning.
All right, we'll go to the 3 papal scriptures. In Matthew 16:9, Jesus gives Peter the keys alone to the kingdom. Do you know the typological reference of the keys in the Old Testament? You know what?
Yeah,
the
I'm
keys
aware of
mean?
Isaiah.
And what do the keys
Eliakim.
mean?
The householder. I'm aware of all that.
What do they mean, though? Specifically to which king?
The steward.
To David, the king. So yeah, this.
Well, in
this
Isaiah,
is a
it's not David.
This is a typological reference.
You're talking about the keys of the house
keys.
of David. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Okay, so the keys of the house of David. You think this? Does he give these keys to all of the apostles?
Yes.
How does he give all these keys to the apostles? He gives them to Peter alone.
Well, in 2 chapters later, he says the exact same thing to the whole college.
He gives the keys of the kingdom to the whole college of cardinals, to the whole college of apostles.
Yeah.
Can you read that for me?
Yeah, Matthew 18 says that the binding and the loosing, which is what the keys signify, is literally said to the entire college 2 chapters later.
Yeah, no,
you
binding
didn't
and
know that.
loosing.
You
No,
didn't
I
know
did
that.
know that.
Oh.
But binding and loosing is given
Is the
in
operation of the keys.
The Third Ecumenical Council and the Sixth Ecumenical Council. It's affirmed as given to Peter alone. Primatial authority everywhere on earth. Sorry, this is the Seventh Ecumenical Council. Primatial authority everywhere on earth was given by the Redeemer of the world to the blessed Apostle Peter. Mm-hmm. Through the same apostle, the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Roman Church has till now and will hold for all time primacy and sovereign authority. How does that square with your interpretation?
Right, because that language is also used. Matthew 16 is applied in the Seventh Ecumenical Council to the emperor.
No, the emperor doesn't have the binding and loosing power. The
council?
emperor can forgive sins?
No, I'm saying the council also uses that terminology for the emperor, so it doesn't prove what you think it proves.
It does prove what I think it proves.
No, it
everywhere on earth, the emperor
say-
can confess sins, can be a confessor
Maybe you don't
of sin.
understand that I'm saying I don't believe that. I'm saying what the council also says.
The council says primatial authority?
It says that the keys in Matthew 16 also applies to the emperor, which I don't believe, but the council also says that.
Where does it say that?
It's brought up in the Ubi-Ibarra debate.
No, I mean, but where does it say that in the council? Can you read me something
I don't
like
have the
line?
documents with me, no, but you can look it up.
So you think that, I just want your best estimate. You think primatial authority everywhere on earth, because we're talking about the
Are you aware of
the
Cyprian?
passage? Well, hold on.
I know
hold
what
on.
it says.
We're talking about the passage that I brought up, the three passages, particularly the keys. Everywhere on earth given by the Redeemer of the world to the blessed apostle Peter, through the same apostle, the Holy Catholic Apostolic Roman Church. How about that? It doesn't give it to the empire the way it would be the analogate for the emperor. Mm-hmm. It's only given to the Roman Church, hold now and for all time through primacy and sovereign authority. How does that square with your interpretation?
Because, like I said, the keys is used at times in that flowery language to
That's
say
not
that
flowery language.
it is. I mean, the entire debate between Ubi and Ibarra was about all
Primatial
all these
authority everywhere on earth is flowery.
Yeah, it is.
Primatial authority.
Yeah.
It's specific.
Yeah, have you heard the term?
I'm a trained attorney. This is how we describe
the
jurisdiction.
terminology that's used in the ecumenical councils for the Patriarch of Constantinople is similar.
How about Council of Chalcedon? Peter has spoken through Leo.
Are you aware that they examined the tome against Cyril?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, so Cyril was the standard.
No.
So Peter spoke through Cyril.
Did he have
you didn't know
primatial
that.
authority?
Well, you're retroactively.
But did he have
you're
primatial authority?
retroactively saying
He
that
didn't, did
you're
he?
retroactively reading the 7th back to the 4th.
How about this? Is this flowery language from Ephesus, the third council?
It is.
The
It's a
head
legate.
the head of the whole faith, the head of the apostles
Is that a legate?
blessed Peter.
Is that a legate?
It's in
who?
the Octa.
Is it Philip the legate?
No.
Are you sure? Oh.
I think it's in the Octa. I mean, I could check
Yeah,
it.
do you think that every statement?
I think it's a
so
legate
you
that
think
was
that every
cited in the
statement from a
Octa.
legate is dogmatic?
No,
Interesting, because
of
nobody
course
else
not.
believes
Of
that.
course not. It has to
Right.
be in the
So
Octa.
the Pope's legates.
Wait, I
say
just said
that-
it's in the Octa.
The Pope's legates say something, and you think that that's
It's
now
quoted.
dogmatic.
The head of the whole faith, the head of the apostles is blessed Peter. So what excuse is it? Is it that it's flowery?
But none of that proves Vatican I.
I wasn't trying to prove Vatican I. This is
really?
my cross. I was trying to prove that Jesus instituted
the Orthodox
the papacy.
The Orthodox don't disagree with that.
Jesus instituted the papacy, and
But
you were saying you
Orthodox
don't
don't
like it.
disagree with that.
What does it mean at your own council?
It just doesn't mean what you think.
What does it mean at your own council at 870 Constantinople 4? At your own council, that the chief of the apostles, Peter, has the authority of universal binding and loosing. Just explain that to me.
The same way that your documents of the Vatican
To quoque.
explain those things.
Explain it. I just want to know.
I believe it.
what
in the
universal
same
binding and
sense
loosing
as
means.
your Vatican documents explain it.
Can you unpack what that means? 'Cause it sounds like you're dodging.
Appeals are made to the Bishop of Rome, but they're also made to other bishops. And as Cyprian says, all bishops are Peter.
But the power of universal binding and loosing.
But that same flowery language is also used of other patriarchates and
What do you
other
mean
sees.
flowery language? This is appellate
The
jurisdiction
entire-
language. This is
But
literally
wait a
the
minute.
language
The
we
appellate-
use in American
The appellate
court.
jurisdiction argument, according to the the Alexandria document, the Chieti documents, proves my position because appellate jurisdictions allow for retrials in the local jurisdiction.
It proves your position that he has an honorary non-jurisdictional power.
No, are you aware what
the Peter in Rome?
No, Sardica allows
For Constantinople to
retrials.
say the chief of the apostles Peter has the authority of universal binding and loosing.
That's
also
insane. No,
That's
you're not
insane.
listening to what I'm saying. That terminology and that phraseology is also used of the emperor, and it's also used of other patriarchates and bishops to do the same types of things.
Okay, in John, that's insane. In
not
John
insane.
21,
It's not ins-
Jesus tells Peter 3 times, "Feed my sheep." He repeats it.
No,
Feed
none of
my
that's
sheep,
Vatican
feed my
I.
sheep, feed my
I
sheep.
give an Orthodox interpretation.
Why would Christ entrust the universal flock to one man if his role was
It's
just
not.
honorific?
It's not.
What do you mean it's not?
You're just assuming that those passages teach Vatican I and the universal jurisdiction.
I'm not
when-
talking about Vatican
Your
I.
own-
Vatican I wouldn't happen
your own-
for 1800 years. You're obsessed with it. I'm asking
because
literally.
because that's not what's in
You
Christ's
think
mind.
Vatican I had happened at the time of John 21? Obviously not.
No,
Jesus
your
tells Peter
position needs
3
that to be.
times. He tells Peter 3 times back in whatever, the year 33.
Yeah, that's because he denied
Feed
it 3
my
times.
sheep. Why would he? But I'm just asking, why would he entrust the universal
He
flock
didn't.
to?
That's just your assumption. That the
I'm
entire
reading scripture.
Where does it say the entire universal flock is there?
The whole flock, not just the local church, because
Okay.
he's not referring to the local church. That's why he says it. Why does he say it 3 times, Jay? What's
Because
the meaning
Peter
of that?
denied him 3 times. Duh.
But okay, bring
right.
it further.
So it's not Vatican I.
No. So why? What is the authority of Peter denying him 3 times and this being undone 3 times?
The authority of it? I don't know what that means.
So you think that Christ is not entrusting the universal flock to one
Timothy
man
was in
if his role
Ephesus.
was
Timothy was
just
in,
honorific.
Timothy was in Ephesus. Peter isn't over that.
Right. And the authority of universal binding and loosing is just flowery. Jesus gives the keys to Peter
maybe you should have
alone,
watched the.
and that's just flowery.
You should have watched the Ubi Ibarra debate because they talked about all the flowery language.
I've seen it. And it's absurd to just say anytime you don't like that a power
No,
is given, you
that's
say it's
not what I
flowery
said.
language.
No, it's not what I
see
said.
it too. Primatial
No, I
authority
just-
everywhere on earth.
I-
That's flowery. That's flowery.
It is because you tried to cite,
Everywhere
you
on
tried to
earth.
cite
It's very
you tried to
specific.
cite legates
It's
as if that was
jurisdictional.
dogmatic. No,
this is Nicaea too.
the councils of
You're wrong.
Sardica.
This
no,
is not a
you
legate.
cited-
This is
you
Pope
cited
Hadrian.
earlier the legate.
Why would Pope Hadrian be read and stuck
So
into the
because-
octa at Nicaea
do you
II,
think that a
saying
pope-
that primatial authority everywhere on
Because-
earth has been given by? Does this strike
Because-
anyone else as,
Can I
as
answer
more
his
than
question?
flowery?
Can I answer his question?
Some people in the chat were saying Jay likes flowers. That's what they're saying in the chat. I'm not going to have an opinion. I'm going to take either side.
Can I answer?
Yeah, you can answer, and then we should probably cut that off and go to the conclusion right now.
Yeah. So I'm not trying to say that every statement is flowery language. I was specifically talking about some of the statements. Let me give an example where Basil says, when he's talking about the Meletian Schism, he says that the church in Antioch is the head of the entire body, and the whole body listens to the head. Nobody believes that the Bishop of Antioch is the head of the entire universal church. It's one example of the flowery language, which came up multiple times in the debate between Ubi and Ibarra and other debates. So all I'm saying is that the case in Matthew 16 in the Seventh Ecumenical Council doesn't go very far because it also applies to the emperor in the acts of that council, which I don't accept. I'm just saying that they use that terminology and they cite that text for the emperor. What I'm also saying is that
Do they cite it in the same way though? Do they cite it in the same way where
Yeah,
they're saying
they-
primatial authority,
No, no,
where
no.
he's a confessor of
No,
sin?
what they say is that the gates of hell will not prevail against the empire nor the emperor.
Of
So they're
course.
citing Matthew, but nobody believes that because the empire fell, right?
But
So I'm
I'm-
just saying that Matthew 16 in the councils can be used, and it doesn't necessarily prove the Vatican I position, which is what you have to prove.
I'm not talking about Vatican I. I'm talking about
But that's what you have to defend.
the entire. It was like a 3-line specific quote, and you're saying, well, they said
Can
basically
I
the
address
same
the
thing
Pope,
about the
the
emperor.
later Pope Hadrian thing? Can I address that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
love it.
I do agree with you that over time, and if you read Szyszynski's book on Orthodoxy and the Papacy, he discusses this. By the time of Pope St. Gregory the Great, he admits and agrees to the Pentarchy. At the same time as Pentarchy is accepted by Rome, Rome is also making more and more grandiose and grandeur-related statements and claims. I agree with you that those claims are there and they're being made. But from an Orthodox perspective, just because the Pope at a council says that, we don't necessarily think that it's true because the Pope said it and it's in the council, right? It could be the Acts, it could be flowery language, and we don't accept everything that a Pope says,
Of course.
even at a council.
So the real issue, epistemologically, is how do you say that this is not circular reasoning? In other words, what I kept repeating in my opening, the councils are ecumenical when we accept them. And only the
right.
accepted councils are ecumenical. That's why you guys have 14
not-
churches. That's why you can't meet
right.
the first mark of the church.
Let me
you have
say
three.
this.
You have three
One.
patriarchs of
All right,
Antioch.
for the
You
sake
have
of
three
this-
in your church.
All right, for the sake of this,
But you can't meet the one. There's one head. There's one visible sign of unity.
that was God telling us to get to the closing. All right, so in conclusion on that, let's end with the conclusion both to look. We're gonna cut down to the 5-minute conclusion because it's almost
Okay.
midnight and
That's fine.
there's a kid in here, so it's like gotta go to bed. But so we'll cut out 5 minutes and then I'll go through some super chats. We went through most of the super chats though that were out there. I read some of the $2 and $1 super chats, but I was mostly keeping it the $5, $10, and $20 and up super chats. And I thank you everyone who gave the super chats. That was really appreciative of you that were there, and we'll try to make sure that we get to them somehow because there was just too many. But I really appreciate it. Don't forget, subscribe to this channel if you don't. We are live Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Right now, we have special shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays as well that are live, but they're pre-recorded. We're having some new shows start on the channel, including Joel Webbin, who's been working with these two guys as well, doing a theological show, trying to bring Catholics, Prots, and Orthodox together to fight what's going on in this world together, to be masculine and to take back our countries, lead our families, and to repopulate this world. Am I right? That's a good idea. Plus, you can also join local, support this show directly if you want to, because every time we do this show live, we end up having live segments. If it's a special show, sometimes we don't. Kind of put it all out there at ElijahSchaefer.locals.com. You can follow us on Rumble, YouTube, wherever you want to, but I greatly appreciate your support. And let's go into this. We'll go ahead and we'll start with Jay. Let me put some time on the clock here. I'm going to go a little shorter, and we're going to try to stick to it, please. To summarize it, due to the simplicity of that, I'm going to give you 6 minutes instead of 10. Let me reset the clock. If you're ready to go, this is the conclusion, both of this segment and of the show.
Yep.
You have the clock.
Yeah. So I'd like to address a couple things that did come up here. There's a really good book, by the way, because a lot of these comments, a lot of these quotes need to be addressed in terms of the context and then more sort of spaced out. There's a great book called Papacy and the Orthodox by Edward Szyszynski. He's the same person that was a uniate and became Orthodox. He wrote the book on the Filioque, and he also wrote this excellent book on the history of these disputes. And he actually begins with the patristic era, or excuse me, the post-apostolic period with Clement and Ignatius, and talks about how, for example, for the last 60 plus years, even the Roman Catholic Church no longer utilizes things like Clement because they don't actually demonstrate what the claims of Vatican I claim. The claims of Vatican I, for example, if you read Satis Cognitum, which is Leo XIII's description and definition of what is supposed to be understood in terms of papal supremacy, Satis Cognitum says that it has always, at all times, been understood that the Roman See had the claims that Vatican I has about it. So in other words, there's no development of doctrine according to Satis Cognitum. It is clearly that the Roman See was indefectible, infallible, and had universal jurisdiction. Now, he likes to say that, well, I don't have to accept these statements from the Chieti document because well, it's just not infallible. Of course, there is no epistemic criteria for the Roman Catholic for what is actually infallible, because Tim knows that it's more than just a few ex cathedra statements. You also have to believe all the dogmatic teachings in the ordinary universal magisterium. And in fact, there's a whole list of, I'll give you guys the list of these. You can look them up yourself since we don't have time to go through them. Denzinger 1683, Denzinger 1698, Denzinger 1792, Casti Connubii 104 all say that the position is condemned if you say you only follow the ex cathedra magisterial statements. That is a condemned proposition. And it's funny because you actually heard him seem to be arguing that tonight. Now, in regard to...
Just let him conclude, please.
Sorry.
Please. We have 4 hours and 13 minutes.
Because universal ordinary magisterial teaching would be much broader and would bind him and everyone else to a whole bunch of other things. And that's precisely what the point of Vatican I was to say. Now, all I needed was one dogmatic contradiction, which I think we saw with the geopolitical power claims that were necessary for salvation for 900 years. He said, oh, it's just a discipline. That's his way to get around this doctrinal contradiction. But again, I will go back to the famous instance that Ubi brought up to Ibarra, which Ibarra didn't have an answer to, and which I will reassert again from the Papacy and the Orthodox. Pope Vigilius submitted to the Ecumenical Council because he was threatened with excommunication and removal from the diptychs. And that's where he landed. That's where he ended up. That's why Vigilius is such a strong argument against the claim that Jesus instituted this universal supremacy that was from all times, at all times, everywhere, infallible, indefectible from the earliest days. That's what he has to prove. That's why he was deflecting into these passages that don't actually prove that. They prove merely that there's those passages which can be read in an Orthodox sense or in a Roman Catholic sense. He has a system that he has to defend. He tried to say that it's all coherence theory, or so. I don't hold to secular coherence theory, so he doesn't know what he's talking about. The position only requires one contradiction for the whole thing to fall apart. And you can read the most recent Richard Price text on the case of Vigilius. And when Richard Price was on Reason and Theology, and they interviewed him a few years ago, and he said that the Pope did not have universal jurisdiction in the first millennium. Just like the Chieti document says, the Pope did not have universal jurisdiction in the first millennium. That means Vatican I is false, and that's why Vigilius disproves the papacy. And there's many more. Honorius, what, 2 minutes or we're done?
No, you 2 minutes.
Okay. There's many more. There's also the case of Honorius. Honorius is not just condemned because he supposedly fibbed or failed to condemn. It's actually because he wrote a letter to a bishop. So notice the status of the text. It wasn't ex cathedra. It wasn't magisterium. It was a letter to a bishop where he affirmed monothelitism, and he was successively condemned by, in the East, 3 councils, including the Seventh Ecumenical Council. So Honorius becomes a heretic explicitly. Most Roman Catholics, except for a few, will admit this now today. But that means that the Pope isn't indefectible. And yet Vatican I claims that the See of Peter is indefectible. It is never failing in its truth and in its faith. And yet tonight we've seen in just a handful of examples, and I can give many, many more, that it is in fact failing. And that's why we don't put our hope in a geopolitical world ruler, which now calls for open borders and all of that, who used to say you had to believe in his quizat sadarak, lisan al-gib powers to be saved. Now you don't have to believe it's just a discipline, hand wave it. No. The papacy is a geopolitical tool. And if you go to my channel and watch all of my old videos, you can find the lectures where I've walked through David Wim Hof's excellent book showing that the CIA also bought into and helped to buy out the papacy through Operation Gladio. There's multiple texts from multiple Roman Catholics even on that. So what are we looking at with the papacy? Is it really a center of unity? Or is it a tool of inclusive capitalism, socialism, World Economic Forum, all the stuff that you see Vatican II promoting with the internationalism, a new world order, etc., explicitly in the church in the modern world texts? That's what the papacy actually is. The papacy is not your friend. It is a spiritual cancer, and it does not produce the thing that it claims to produce: unity, holiness, and truth.
All right. That was, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Dyer of the Orthodox tradition. We get a round of applause there. Absolutely fantastic end to his rebuttal. Before we put the ones and the twos in the chats, I'd like to turn the time over. It was almost exactly 6 minutes, like 1 second over. Over to Timothy Gordon. Just want to clarify you're ready. Yes, you good, or do you need a second? Okay. Go ahead. In the terms of defense of the Catholic tradition, give your defense and conclusion. You may begin.
Well, it's very clear. To prove whether or not, I think the prompt of this question was Jesus instituted the papacy, we have to check whether Jesus instituted the papacy. The three Gospels that I read, and what even Easterners thought of them, what all of the early church thought they meant, even if power would be aggrandized or used in ways that Jay objects to later. You can't object later in the timeline. You have to object earlier to show that Jesus didn't establish the papacy. Here are, and Jay objected, as Orthodox do, to my exegesis of those three papal scriptures, but except here is Abu Qura. These are all Eastern thinkers before the schism. If he meant by these words in the gospel only St. Peter, the church would have been deprived of comfort and would have had no one to deliver her from those heretics, whose heresies are truly the gates of hell, which Christ said would not overcome the church. Accordingly, there is no doubt that he meant by these words nothing other than the holders of the seat of St. Peter, who have continually strengthened their brethren and will not cease to do so as long as this present age lasts. So is it multiple people? Yes, it is the people who inhabit the chair of Peter. Now here's Maximus, the confessor. All the churches of Christians everywhere have held the greatest church there to be their sole base and foundation, since on the one hand, it is in no way overcome by the gates of Hades, according to the very promise of the Savior, referring to the same scripture, but holds the keys of the Orthodox confession and faith in him. And on the other hand, it shuts up and locks every heretical mouth that speaks unrighteousness against the Most High. This is Theodore Studite. I witness now before God and men, they have torn themselves away from the body of Christ, from the supreme see, in which Christ placed the keys of the faith, the supreme see, against which the gates of hell, I mean the mouths of heretics, have not prevailed and never will until the consummation. Note all of the continual themes which ring the same in all of these thinkers, exegeting the one passage. According to the promise of him who cannot lie, let the most blessed and apostolic Pope Paschal rejoice, therefore, for he has fulfilled the work of Peter. This is Theodore Studite. An Orthodox scholar says of this, the same time we find St. Maximus the Confessor and Theodore the Studite expressing the view that Rome was in unique sense the chair of Peter that would never fall into heresy. This is clean work. And it's simple and straightforward because the establishment of the pontificate by Jesus was simple and straightforward in the first Christian century. And I read you all of these places where for the first 1,000 years, the Orthodox accepted the papacy. And you heard not a word, not a single word from Jay tonight as to how they accepted the papacy. For the last nearly 1,000 years, they haven't accepted the papacy. And of course, because this is an indefensible relinquishment of a millennium-old position. It's a relinquishment of the fundamental pinnacle of the faith, the fundament of the faith. St. Peter, as many Orthodox Eastern scholars say, before the schism, he is the foundation of the faith. He's the prince of the apostles. Flowery language, yes. But I read from multiple councils that the establishment of the papacy in these three passages is accepted in both East and West. And of course, this always brings us back to the fact that in both East and West, there was a pontificate for 1,000 years. And there was jurisdiction being exercised. As I said the first time we debated, if it's just an honorary power, if it's just an honorary role, like being a knight at a round table and you're the first of honor, then you are not appealed to for an excommunication. You can't fire anyone. Dwight Schrute can't fire anyone in the office when he's left in charge as a kind of first among equals. That's true enough. Well, within the first four councils, there are appeals being made to the Pope. In the first three councils, appeal being made to the Pope to excommunicate the eventual number 2 in the church. I don't know what else that stands for, and I've tried to see it that way. I've heard nothing coherent tonight that would answer the question, what do those 3 papal scriptures mean? I've read Orthodox scholars, Eastern scholars, and an Orthodox scholar, Cleanerwork, who exegete them exactly the way we did. Even if you ignore Clement of Rome because it's inconvenient, Ignatius of Antioch calls the Roman Church the one presiding in love, a la a president. Irenaeus, that all churches must agree with the Roman Church because of its preeminent authority. Is preeminent authority flowery language? No, it's juridical language. It's jurisdictional language. Cyprian of Carthage says, while he's clashing with Pope Stephen, he still calls Rome, who he's not happy with at the time, the chair of Peter and principal church from which sacerdotal unity has arisen. This is how the Roman Catholic Church stands for those 4 marks.
We have 30 seconds.
Holy, Catholic, apostolic, established at the very first ecumenical council. The oneness requires a visible sign of unity on earth. All bishops can be said to succeed Peter in a sense, but Rome succeeds in a special way, and I think that way has been made clear by these 3 scriptural foundations of the papacy.